Hi, Panda here. A quick disclaimer for the Saga series and our discussions on it. Please note Saga contains very mature, explicit, adult, violent, and graphic content. In our discussions, we acknowledge the existence of sex and related accoutrement. If that is not your thing, we advise you to avoid this episode. That is all. Cheers!
Welcome, everybody, to the green team of the Legendarium podcast. With me today, I have Befuddled Panda,
Hello!
Kyptan,
Heyo.
Mr. Anderson,
Hello.
and I am your host, Yettibeats. Today, we are going to talk about a big series, but in a small format. We are talking Saga, the graphic novel series. And we have two first timers, and we have two third timers.
Two-timers!
Two timers.
Repeat
I'm just kidding.
readers.
Veterans.
Repeat readers.
Yeah, old wily vets. And I figured first, Panda wanted to say, go ahead, Panda, we have a podcast already, or an episode already around graphic novels, if anyone wanted to listen to that first, right?
So a little while ago, we on the Green Team, we did do an intro to graphic novels. So Saga is a graphic novel series, which is a format that we don't cover too often on this podcast, but we do love it. At least some of us do. And if you want to know more, if you are not yet reading graphic novels and you're curious, go check out that episode for more information and for recommendations of good starting points.
There you go. So Panda and a few other panelists not on here talked about that, but I'll start with Mr. Anderson. What's your kind of history with graphic novels? Is Saga kind of your first foray, or because I know this is the first time for Saga for you, but I don't know about graphic novels.
No, I've read a lot of Alan Moore's stuff, predominantly, and yeah, I kind of started with V, and I really loved it, so I read a lot of his stuff. But I haven't ventured a lot. I think I read the first one of Sandman, but that might be as far as I've gotten, and as far as graphic novels go.
There you go. Alan Moore, did he do Swamp Thing? Is that right too?
No, wasn't that Gaiman? I could be wrong about that. Sometimes some of their stuff kind of blends together for me.
Shows how much we know about graphic novels already. Kip, what about you? Are you a hardcore graphic novelist?
I am not, no. But I do like a bunch of web comics, and I feel like I'm more familiar in that format. And sometimes those get collected into larger omnibus novels, and that's kind of more typically the thing I'd be reading. Like Girl Genius is a favorite.
Oh, I like the title. Intriguing.
Yeah.
Yeah, what about you, Panda? I'm sure you talked about it on the intro to graphic novel podcast, but are you a well-worn reader in this format?
I wouldn't say I'm like a very well-read person in terms of graphic novels, but I do dabble and I do enjoy it. I've read a bit widely. There's like, the kind of stereotypical graphic novels that you might think about, like superhero kind of comics or the sci-fi fantasy kind of elements, but then there are also like smaller stories that are more just like personal life or biographies, autobiographies that are in graphic novel format that I also enjoy.
Oh, well, let's make it 4 for 4 for people who are not very well versed in this format, because I also don't read too much graphic novels. Saga was like the big one for me, kind of like a gateway to wanting to read more. I read some of the Marvel DC stuff, like what's popular now on Disney Plus, Miss Marvel. I remember reading her graphic novel that came out. After Saga, I wanted more like kind of non-superhero stuff, and I looked at Monstrous. I'm pretty sure it's pretty popular. Monstrous, yeah. I didn't love it like I love Saga, but it's cool. I tried to dive into there. But yeah, so far it looks like we got 4 kind of newbies here just being sucked into this wild and crazy universe, safe to say. And let's dig into it. We'll do non-spoilers real quick, and we'll just get our general thoughts on the first 3 volumes of this series. So we read up to volume 3, not issue 3, volume 3. So that's the first 18 issues if you are following along that way. And I'll start with the newbies, the 2 people who haven't read this at all. With Kip, we'll go with you. What are your general impressions of Saga and your expectations? Were they met, exceeded, creeped out?
I wasn't. So I really liked it. First off, excellent graphic novel from my limited experience. But I wasn't expecting to not like one of the main characters so much.
Mm.
Oh,
That
let me guess.
was a little bit unexpected.
Okay, main characters. Let me guess. Marco?
And we're still in spoiler free.
Oh yeah, sorry. Never mind. I love guessing games. All right, so you like as the whole, but one character really revolted you.
Yeah. And I really liked a bunch of the imagination and the mixture of fantasy and science fiction, and several panels were disturbing.
I think that might be a good segue to just give a warning about the content of this graphic novel series. Like, when we say graphic, it's definitely graphic in more than one way. It's very mature adult content.
Yeah.
So please be warned, and we're going to try to keep this as PG-13 as we can. So we won't go into too many details about the graphicness of
This
some
book
of those
would get
panels.
confiscated in a school.
Yes. I don't think yes. They would not carry it in a school library.
Or if they would, I want to meet that librarian.
Yes.
Hey, there's good life lessons in this series. I mean,
There are.
told in a
There are.
just
Sure.
different way, but
In between
Sure.
all the graphic stuff, yes. When you're not seeing, oh no, I guess we shouldn't talk about that yet. Never mind.
I did like how every issue had the questions and answers segments in the back, and how they gave little bits of their process. I know that's not really specific to Saga, but it was an unexpected benefit of the format.
Oh, I don't even know if I noticed that they had that and behind the volumes of the graphic novel.
It was in the back pages of the graphic novel. Like every episode, every issue would end, and then there was like a piece of commentary
I don't think
at the end of every issue.
I don't think mine
The one
had
you
that.
sent us was hilarious when he's describing, not spoilers, but talking to his artist about a scene. It was very awkward.
Yes.
Yeah.
That content isn't in every edition.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I didn't have that.
I read issue by issue.
Got it.
Very nice. Yeah, Mr. Anderson, how'd you feel about it? Panda said you just ran through these 3 issues.
Yeah, so I was just sitting there, and Panda handed me volume 1 and said, read the first few pages. And then I looked up, and she said, keep going. And the next thing I knew, I read all 3.
You did not need that much encouragement to continue reading.
It was very good. It can be rather shocking. Because you will just turn a page, and then you'll be like, oh, okay, this is where we are now. But
Yeah,
overall, it was just great. I'm really intrigued by the story. I agree there are some characters who I like more than others. But overall, I really enjoyed it.
Nice. Yeah, I finished it in a night. I will say that. I did
read
not want to stop
that
reading.
quick.
Well, we'll get into it, but the author is just like superb at cliffhangers. I think he does it better than at least a lot of people. Panda, second time reader. Did you feel the same way as Mr. Anderson? You couldn't stop?
I mean, it's been several years since I revisited the series, but I still enjoy it. Even though I knew like bits and pieces, like I remembered bits and pieces and knew what was going to come, I still had a really good time reading it.
Yeah, me too. I'm trying to think, like, I remember certain, not shocking things, but as the whole, I don't remember how they got there. So it's been interesting seeing the stuff and just seeing the step by step. But I'm the same way. I loved it. I think I first read this in 2016. So I think there was maybe 6 volumes released at the time. And I remember it being like, it vaulted up to like my favorite piece of media like up in my Mount Rushmore. Like it's there with like Hobb, Abercrombie. Like this series makes me feel very similar to Hobb does, and I think I don't think any medium can really match books. How like the feeling you get when you're reading a book that really connects, whether it's something sad, the emotions, like not even movies, which I love. I think books are just far and away above and beyond. But I think Saga for a graphic novel does that impeccably well. Not only from the author, I think Brian K. Vaughan, but the artist Fiona Staples. She can draw characters with just a look on their face, and it's or tears running down a feline creature's eyes, and it makes your heartstrings kind of tug. You know what I mean? So it's
Hmm.
both of them together. I think are. I was kind of blown away, and it made me. It was like a gateway. I wanted to
Hmm.
definitely jump into more graphic novels. Even though I'll say, I don't know for you, Panda, I haven't really connected with any other graphic novels like this one.
Yeah. I mean, when I was going into the series the first time, I was not expecting the emotional impact that I would have as a reader. And even going in the second time, knowing like how emotional the series can get, like I was still impacted almost as much as the first time I read it.
Yeah, yeah, me too. Me too. I'm ready to get into spoilers. I've been itching to talk about
Yeah, you have.
it. So, yeah, let's dive in. We all loved it. Let's first start with.
Okay, what character does Kip not like?
Oh yeah.
Alana.
Really?
Yeah.
Why? Tell us. Tell us.
Yeah.
She's 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 very mean to her husband.
Aww.
Well,
And he's totally fine with it. He is totally fine with how she treats him. But
Marco, that pushover.
Rough. Yeah.
I think in the third volume, I don't want just jumping around when those reporters go to her dad's house. I think there's a lot there that says a lot about how she grew up. Her best friend pretty much married her
yep,
dad as her
Yeah.
yep.
stepmom. So I think she just has this innate distrust of marriage or long-term relationships. I think you're right, takes that out on Marco, whether she realizes it or not. And
He does.
he does. But yeah, it's funny. I never really thought she was overly. I mean, I can see it now.
I
Totally.
don't
I'm just thinking
necessarily
now.
think it's overly. I think it's very realistic. I think it's very natural. I think it's well developed. I just it's sometimes hard for me to remember that when she says the things she says.
Well, I'm just happy you didn't see the will. We would have had a problem.
Oh, are you kidding me? No, no way. I love the Will. He's amazing. He is tragic.
Yeah, we're getting into it. What characters did we like, good and bad, or stood out to us? So Kip says,
Lying Cat for sure.
I mean, that's
I love Flying Cat.
I was
He doesn't have a
ready.
whole lot to say, really.
Lying.
I was ready to put down the graphic novels if Lying Cat was dead there.
Oh.
yeah, I love that relationship.
Yeah, especially how she and Sophie, the little girl,
Oh yeah.
how they bonded.
I clipped that and I sent that in the group chat, didn't I?
Hmm.
That
Yep.
was one of the best scenes. That was so touching. Like so Sophie, is obviously like a child sex slave and just saying these things and then ends with like nice things that she wants to do and then ends with like, I'm dirty inside and doesn't for all the things and
Yeah.
Lion Cat cuts her off and says lying. So sweet. And just the next panel's her hugging her kid. I'm
Yeah.
not sure if it's a girl or
It's a she. Lying Cat's a she.
she. Yeah, Panda, what about you? Any characters disliked, stood out, love?
I remember the first time reading it, like I was very shocked by the stock and not really enjoying her. She did feel like more of a plot device. So there's that. But overall, like Marco's dad, and mom, I really do like them a lot. Um,
They're really cute.
especially yeah, especially like how Marco's mom also after her husband dies, like how she and the author Oswald were able to bond. And just the moment where it was like Oswald like tells about how his first wife died And
Yep.
then and Marco's mom's like, okay, we need a moment and like have that adult
Grown ups talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked. I loved Barr. I thought, like I said, I thought he was the MVP of the second volume, which was pretty much, that
Yeah.
volume was like Marco and Alana meet his parents, kind of hang out with his parents. And I wrote down in my notes that I liked the so Marco, that race, I guess you call them, they have powers to heal or do things, or he does, but he has to you have to tell a secret, or they can use magic, but he needs a secret for it to work. And I love that writing device that he used, because it's able to, it eventually pays off with in a cliffhanger when Marco's dad said he's dying and no one knows it.
Right.
And it was just a
Yep.
sweet way for that to segue into him bonding Alana, right? I keep wanting to mess up.
Mhm.
Yep.
But they like bonded over that, because he has you think about it, he has such a small sliver of this story, and he really made the most of it in that volume, just kind of hanging around with her, and making the cute little outfits for the baby, and the nice fitting outfit for Alana, as she said, was also like body armor.
And also, it's always nice to have a callback in a magic system where you're like, oh, yeah, I know how this thing works. And then you see it work as you expected, but the narrative is changed.
Right. They use it in a different set. Yes. Yeah. That was really good. Yeah. Mr. Anderson, what about you?
I really he was a bit of a stereotype, but the writer, what was his name, Oswald or whatever?
Yeah.
Yep.
He was just fun to hang around with. And Isabel, the half a ghost we get.
Ghost nanny.
She's a lot of fun. She's
I
a lot
love
of
her.
fun.
She's
How
so
old are
sassy.
you?
Marriage advice to Marco's mom.
Yeah.
Tell her to get back in the field.
The prince guy creeps me out. He was a little weird.
Oh, I love Prince Robot 4. I love
You
him so
would.
much.
That race is just so bizarre.
Yes.
I just love the pictures that show up on his face, for his emotions.
Which ones?
All of them. Yeah, those are all great. Yeah, Oswald, I really liked. I don't know, out of the three, what your favorites would be. The third volume was definitely mine. It was a little slower, but I like how it came full circle from the beginning. When Prince Robot steps in, and then it flashed back how they got there. But Oswald was a big part of that, between, as you said, the conversation he had with Marco's mom, really the conversation he had with Prince Robot. I thought that was like a big highlight about war, and he's like the opposite of war. Prince Robot was
Is
like
not
peace.
peace.
Yeah, it's love. Well, Prince Robot says the F word.
Not the exact words, but okay.
Essentially, he meant love. But I love that Prince Robot. It's very interesting going forward. If you noticed, he not super subtle, but at the end of that, he gets kind of tased or stunned, and his screen is resetting. It's like kind of like a reset, which also is kind of a character reset. The last thing he heard when he did that was talking about the importance of love. So I would pay attention to that going forward with that character, because I think this is where Prince Robot really gets great. I mean, it's fun.
I mean, he's been pretty great.
But he's been like, yeah.
He hasn't been a good person, but he's been great.
Right. I was gonna say, he's been like pretty terrible. Where he's like just one-minded, and he definitely gets fleshed out.
He just wants to be there for the birth of his child.
That's all he wants. Yeah,
that's all he wants.
He's a family man.
Yeah, every time we saw him, I thought, "There's a family man."
There's a family man.
Even the nudes, yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Well,
got to start a family somehow.
That's right. Or like when Oswald was like, I forget what they're kind of when they were doing that talk, and he's like, "What flashes through your mind?" I thought he was talking about PTSD.
No.
He flashes, and it's just like an orgy with all of
orgy.
Everyone he was in the war with.
Yeah.
Yep. That got censored. That? We can say that.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, cool. Orgy. Sorry. Group hugs. Sorry.
Oh dear.
I'll be cliche then, and the will, I say, for me was like the big, when I read the series, I was like, I want more of this person. Not just because he's also a bald guy who likes cats, but I did like I liked in stories. I think it was interesting. We first see him. He's obviously a villain. Like he's set up to be the villain. Obviously, he's
Mhm.
an assassin and he's sent to kill our heroes. But it quickly shows when he goes to Sextillion, a very interesting place. He meets a slave girl and he wants to save the slave girl. He wants to buy her, and immediately you're like, oh, this guy is like has a heart. Like he's not evil. You know what I mean?
Slave girl named Slave Girl.
Yeah, yeah. Her name was Slave Girl, not just
Yeah.
eventually she got named. So and I think those are good stories, or I think it sets the tone of what this whole saga is going to be. Is that you have bad people who do really good things, and you probably have good people who also do bad things. And I think his character is kind of the first introduction to that. He might still ultimately be a very bad person, and he definitely does murder a lot. But there is that shows that he is a human. That he, for some reason, that's what or not for some reason, but he can murder and kill, but he also doesn't want there to be children slaves in the world.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm afraid in advance of what Marco's going to have to do for his daughter.
Okay. You want to say more?
Yeah.
Because he's trying to be like semi-pacifistic and
Mm.
non-interfering and, a good guy, and the world is not going to let him just raise his daughter in peace.
Mhm.
Right. Well, I mean, first of all, that didn't last very long. He definitely took his sword out.
Oh.
Like,
Oh, yeah. I mean, but that's something that the average comic book reader would like want to happen and expect to happen.
mhm.
I think like that's well within the realm of expected tropes.
Mhm.
Definitely.
That like a retired soldier will break a vow and go back to the sword. But how much further than just the simple mechanical slaughter of battle is he going to have to go to protect his daughter?
Guess you're just gonna have to wait to find out.
It worries me.
I did. Yeah, I did. Yeah, that's true. It's interesting. You said he wants to live a quiet life, and then that third volume, they literally travel to Quietus, a
Yes.
nice place where there's a
Yep.
lighthouse, and they're reading books together and
Oh
playing
yeah.
board games.
That was so nice.
Yeah, but that's a picture of what they want, and is
Mhm.
probably not attainable, but we'll see. Um, so yeah, what about elements of the story? We'll start with you, Panda. Favorite elements, least favorite element of the storytelling, or the anything about this series?
I just really like the characters. Honestly, like the plot is like it's not the plot is bad or anything. It's just that the characters really are what drew me into the series. And some characters that we haven't actually talked about, like Hazel as the narrator.
I was going to say
Um
that's a great choice for the story.
yeah,
Yep.
I really like that the way that the story is being told. And she dropped like not only foreshadowing of what is to come, but just the like philosophical kind of little nuggets she drops. And
Yep.
it brings more substance to this whole thing.
It's very child after they've been to therapy.
Yes.
Or maybe as part of their therapy.
That could be it too. Yeah.
I feel like every line she says that she ends makes me want to cry. I'm like, oh my, what bad thing are you saying? Where she's like, not everyone has a happy story. I'm like, oh,
Yep.
Mhm.
Who is not going to have a happy story here?
yeah, I
Yeah.
know. But she lays it out like everyone. It's like it could be anyone. So, but yeah, that
Mhm.
Yep.
that storytelling aspect is great. I was going to bring that up. I love that she's the narrator. One, it kind of gives you a piece that you're like, all right, well, at least she's probably
Yeah.
alive at the end of this. But also the way she's
She's
speaking,
alive for a while, at least.
Yes.
Old enough to narrate,
yeah, she is adorable. I mean, it's
she's
very
she's
cute baby.
writing this from a Schrodinger's cat box, Armageddon.
Yeah, Mr. Anderson, what about you? Any elements that really stuck out or didn't care for?
It was so surprising to me. These 3 volumes are fairly short, like even all together. And we got to spend so much time, it felt like, with everyone. Like so many characters got their own like arcs in this part in these volumes. and just I feel like they used what they had very well.
Yeah.
To like fill it with these characters we love so much.
I agree. It's weird that we had such a connection already to the main two, Prince Robot, the Will, even like you said, the Ghost Babysitter.
What's the
Mhm.
ship name for the Will and the Stock?
Come on, you can't put us on the spot.
There was like Prince
Little
Robot calls
tree.
the stock the stock's ship the Dragon Skull.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it seems like dragon bone is a magical material in this world, so having a fully
Okay.
dragon skull ship is a very durable creation.
Mm,
All the ships are pretty great. I mean, their ship, that tree that they're just riding, that thing looks awesome. I
the
mean,
rocket ship.
The
yeah, the
rocket
tree.
tree is pretty cool,
Yeah.
and I love that it has a regenerative nature.
hmm
Yeah.
Is that your favorite element?
I was gonna say I really did like that. I was like, if I could like have anything in here that is real, that might be it. I mean, no, I'll say I'll say the cliffhanger aspects. I think he's really good at cliffhangers, and he had a quote. I forget where I read it. It might have been at the end of it, but he says, because they asked him about his cliffhangers, and he said, no cliffhanger involving genuine emotion ever feels cheap. And I
Mm.
at least agree with that with his work. Because, some cliffhangers could be like, or TV shows you watch, you're like, oh, come on, really? You're just dragging this out to watch. But his always have some sort of emotional impact for that volume. Like I wrote down some from the first one where the one is his grandparents show up and they transport there. When Isabel shows up and her gang of ghosts, you're like, when you thought they were going to be deathly killers. And then one of my favorites where Marco seems to be dying and he says his wife's name, Gwendolyn. And
Bride to
Alana's like,
be.
who the F? Yeah, who the F is Gwendolyn? You're
Tell
like, oh my
Gwendolyn I
God.
love her.
Yeah, you're like, who is Gwendolyn? But there's other ones, like when Lion Cat gets booted out of the spaceship when they're attacked and's floating in space. You think he's going to die, or things like that. They really plotted out well where we had an attachment to Lion Cat already. So when that happened, you're like, no, nothing can happen. So there's different. I just think the cliffhangers are really, really good in this series, and I do not know how anyone would function just reading this volume or issue by issue.
Issue.
I would literally be
Yeah.
shaking if I the way I'm like. So yeah, I think that he's just immensely talented with that.
Mhm.
So was this actually? I'm sorry, this is kind of a tangent, but actually released serially?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's actually still ongoing. So the second half of the
Mhm.
series is currently published issue by issue. And it's like every
Gotcha.
month and a half or so a new issue would come out.
So there's 9 volumes released, right? And now they're into the 10th one,
They're working on the 10th. It'll release in October.
right?
Yep.
So me and Panda, I think we agreed we're going to hold off until that releases, right? We're not going to
Yes. I can't handle going issue by issue.
it's not possible.
You say that now.
No, don't tempt me.
Do we missing someone? Who else didn't say their
Kip.
favorite elements? Kip.
My favorite element?
Or least
Ooh.
favorite.
I liked headstock. Any Battlestar Galactica fans will know what I'm talking about with head notation. But I liked the image that the Will had of the stock inside his head on that last planet,
Oh,
the delusion.
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
the
yeah.
hallucinations.
Yep.
Oh man.
I thought that was a fun reveal.
hmm
That was good. Well, I like the way Gwendolyn figured out that there's something going on. She asks
hmm
the Lion Cat a question,
Yep.
and then the cat's just lying, and she's like, oh, she spit out her food. She's like, we need to
Yeah.
get out of here.
Gwendolyn is lovely and capable.
Did you guys buy it? It seemed a little quick, but I was like, I'd fall for the will too, I guess. Like
I buy
Gwendolyn
it.
and the will, yeah. Because she tells Marco I met someone else who I love. I'm like, oh, so there, yeah, it's good. I guess they've been on this journey already.
Well, I think it's
That seemed a little fast, but
yeah. That part did seem a bit fast. I do think that Gwendolyn, she got her heart broken. She's on like a revenge, at least
yes.
seemingly, like a revenge mission. And on the planet, it was revealed that there was this other woman that like she perhaps had a relationship with or like had feelings for, but she realized like, oh, you can't be here, that this can't be real.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, the hallucination. And then I think her seeing how the will treats Sophie and like what he's willing to do for this little girl, that if I read it in that way, then I would buy like how quickly she would have attached herself to the will.
I mean, attachment, interest, sure, but actual love, that's got to be referring to someone else.
Mm.
Yeah, because that scene
Like
too,
that.
I think it was pretty noticeable when Gwendolyn and Margot finally confront each other on top of the lighthouse.
Yeah.
It seemed to me, I I thought it was kind of clear that like Marco is someone who is over that relationship, who is just like he feels bad about it, definitely a little guilty, but he's feelings wise he's over it. Whereas her, that looked like someone who kind of just broke and like thought she was over it, but really had still stuff to get off her chest and is not over what he did to her. So I thought it was like two kind of different. It just seemed like one person who had gotten over something, another who hadn't. And that's why I was like you said, love. I was like, still seems you're not over this your ex husband, but either way, I'm
Yeah.
all for it. I'm not gonna, I'm more than happy for them to be a thing.
Kip is theorizing in his head.
Yeah.
I'm very interested in her romantic history. I'll say that.
There's definitely a history.
I suspect we will get to see all of it in graphic detail.
Before we move on, I do want to say like one of my favorite elements is Fiona Staples' art. Like, so Brian K. Vaughan, he's written other graphic novel series, and one of the most well known is probably Why the Last Man, which also got turned into a show or something. And I tried reading that series, but the art was just not my cup of tea. And so even though the premise was really interesting, I was just like, I'm not as drawn in. But Fiona Staples' art is just, I mean, yes, it's graphic, but like I also want like prints of some of it, to hang up, or to glance at every once in a while. So like because we talk about the connection with these characters, and one of the elements in, at least for me, for how quickly I was able to bond with like Hazel is how cute she is. Like she's
Aw.
portrayed, and Isabel is also like portrayed really well as this ghost character. And then there are definitely the shocking moments that we want to talk about, but we can't get into too many details here.
Isabel's physical appearance is so often tied to and contradictory to her spoken words
Yeah.
that it only works in graphic format.
Right.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
No, and I love her cover too. I mean, like the third one's one of my favorite. Gwendolyn on the hill with Sophie, just with kind of the clouds with the sun behind her. It's just so striking. Her art, and it just has that feel of kind of epicness and like anything is possible in this world, or that it's like infinite. I mean, there's one scene where her art is flying polka dotted sharks, and it's like, and Gwendolyn and the Will are practicing spearing them with his weapon.
Yeah.
And it's like this. It just looks so cool, and it's like with this, especially like with the author's kind of wide scope of a world he's building. You need an artist like that who can just really, literally create this kind of stuff, and it's like a perfect pairing.
Speaking of the cover of that third volume, when I look at it, it gives me like Miyazaki vibes.
Yes.
And
yes.
I think like quite a bit of her art is just like Miyazaki, but more adult.
Yeah. I don't think Totoro would fit in the Saga.
Can you imagine? Oh my goodness. Now I have an image in my head.
Exactly where my head went to.
Oh my god, no! No, I'm so sorry, everyone. Oh dear.
I can't rewatch it now. Anytime I watch that big goofy guy.
Oh no.
It's gonna be like the new Winnie the Pooh movie.
That horror one.
Okay, moving on. What's the next thing we're talking about?
The shocking stuff, right?
I was actually going to skip and go to the funny stuff that we thought was funny and save it, but yeah. I mean,
It can go hand in hand.
I actually do want to talk about the humor because I want to see what you guys thought about it because it isn't for everyone. I will say that. Personally, it is for me.
There were women with legs that went up to their neck.
And that's pretty much all they were, heads on legs.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, their face. There were, I forget, what were the one bodyguards? It was bodyguards or something, maybe Sextillion's bodyguards, but they didn't have a head. On their chest, where their nipples were the eyes. The belly button was the tongue, and they had cups on of some sort with like smiling faces.
Yeah, I think that was
Sextillion. And then yeah, it definitely was. And then their weapons, again, this is a mature weapons. We were like what police would have, the battering things, but they were dildos. And I'm like, I couldn't stop laughing when I saw that. I'm like, how does someone think of this? But also at the same time, I'm like, someone might read this and be like, this is absurd. This guy's either trying too hard or I don't. But I don't know.
And some people might see someone reading this and think this person is depraved.
I did happen to be reading in public.
This is an all-time do not read in public.
I was just absolutely scandalized.
There was a small child next to me, and I was very trying to make sure they didn't see what I was reading.
I was thinking that. I feel like sometimes I'm quick on my feet. I do not know how I could explain myself in public if someone glanced and saw Marco and his mother with that giant, fat, naked giant. And you get the full frontal shot. I don't know what I'd say.
Like, you would just hand it to them and be like, just read it. Okay.
What is the length of time you would spend looking at that page in public, and what is the length of time you would spend looking at that page at your home?
I didn't turn that page for like a minute. I was like, how? Because that scene is what Kip sent us. He sent us the little snippet of the author saying, "Oh, I had to tell my artist describe how to write that character," and I was like, "I don't know." It's disturbing. It was really one of the most graphically disturbing things, and yet funny. I couldn't stop laughing.
Well, that's the thing. Is like it's so unexpected that all I could do was just stare at it. Like I remember the first time reading it, I was like, "Oh my goodness, is this what I'm reading? This is what I'm reading." Okay, well, we're gonna go with it. And I had to stare at it because I had to process what I was seeing. And really, like, the amount of detail she puts into the panels, there's a lot to be gleaned. Just,
professional.
Yeah.
Here's exactly. One of the letters about that I clipped in the chat. I'm one of those surely many who picked up the trade of issues 1 through 6 and got hooked. I picked up issue 7 this week, and I have a few words for you. Giant nasty balls. I'm curious, did you, BKV, write in that the monster had these immense gruesome testicles, or did Fiona take it upon herself to make this giant Triclops nethers a train wreck? Either way, good job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that came from his head. That came from Brian Kevon's head.
Here is an excerpt of what was sent to Fiona. Page 16, splash. I'm so sorry, but it's time for a psychologically scarring splash page. Fiona, feel free to take this monster in a completely different direction if you'd like, but my idea was to create the absolute last thing I'd want to encounter while hanging out with my mother. So yeah, pull back on so that Marco and his mom are just very tiny figures on the ground in the foreground of this shot. Looming over them is our roughly 70-foot tall monster, the Naked Giant. The Naked Giant is pretty much what he sounds like, a creature who's too huge for any clothes to fit on him. This is unfortunate because I'm picturing the Naked Giant being a very fat humanoid creature, one whose big head seems to have sunk directly into his corpulent body. He has 3 bloodshot eyes and a giant mouth filled with multiple rows of rotting teeth. His weapon of choice is a club made from a giant leg bone taken off a rotting corpse of another giant he ate a few weeks ago. But like I say, the most horrific attribute of the Naked Giant is the fact that he is indeed nude. Despite his size, the giant's flaccid penis is rather small and is mostly lost in a dense thicket of wiry pubic hair. Sadly, and I promise that I hate to type this, his testicles are not small. Instead, they are like two massive wrecking balls suspended in a wrinkly, sore-pocked scrotum that dangles all the way down to between the towering giant's knees. No wonder he looks so angry. This moment should hopefully feel more viscerally disturbing than outright silly, Fiona. So please, play it relatively straight if you think that's even possible here.
She did it.
Oh,
She
nailed it.
nailed the assignment. Also,
Oh, if that doesn't make you want to read Saga, I don't know what will.
can we actually keep this part in? I don't know.
I think there might be a lot of bleeping required, but no, I have no idea.
I think we're gonna have to bleep some stuff.
Yep.
I did like the typical mom line after that by Marco's mom, where she's like,
Oh,
"Oh,
yeah.
nothing I haven't seen before." It's like I knew that. Come on. So it sounds like we all liked the humor in this, or we didn't think it was too much. I mean, it is tough to recommend if like you don't know what someone's sense of humor is, but I wouldn't recommend it to my grandmother. Yeah.
I
Depends on the
mean,
grandmother. Who's that woman who's going through the Dresden Files?
oh, you mean on Discord?
No,
Oh.
she's doing a YouTube series.
Oh, I don't know
Really?
who that is.
She's a kindly old woman who's going through the Dresden Files and be like, "Oh, this is spicy."
Oh,
I was gonna say, isn't there a lot of sex in the Dresden
Yep.
Files?
Yep,
Well, nothing she hasn't seen before, right? That's what they say.
exactly.
All right. Well, I think a good way to end is talking about. So the question was, what is the most shocking thing for you in the series? I mean, this. I think it's one of the probably more famous aspects of the series that there's just a lot of shocking reveals, turns, stuff like that. So I'll start, Mr. Anderson. What was the anything that, or what shocked you the most? I should say, from any one of these volumes.
I mean, it was fairly mild compared to what would come later, but like the second part of like volume 1 when we see the prince and his wife together after he was away for a while, I was like, "Oh, we're showing everything." Okay then. And I think that kind of like set the tone after that. So I was like, "Okay, now I can kind of I know what might come on the next page, but that first one is like, okay, hello."
He's a family man.
He's a family man.
He just wants a family. Come on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's safe to say. Kip, what about you? Most shocking thing from this?
Most
you
shocking
actually
was
liked
the
one
naked
of my
giant.
wrecks.
No,
Sorry.
are you? This was not a panda wreck. This was a panda moved it up the TBR.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I'd been meaning to read Saga for several years, so really, you just pushed it over the edge. I've
Good.
like finally 7 years later, I'm reading it. You know, this is what Tour Day has to understand. It was the naked giant, but other shocking moment was, of course, the banned images on Prince Robot's face when he got shot in the war. What else? When Lying Cat got jumped out, but I've already talked about that.
Oh, yeah. Panda, what about you? Any big shockers?
I mean, when I read it the first time, page 1, page 2, I was
Yes.
like, oh, so this is what graphic novels can be like. But I think it has a really good opening where you are just thrown into the middle of it. Like you don't know the history of these people, you don't know why they are in the situation they are, and you're just, I mean, honestly, it's a bit like Malazan, that first book where you're just like thrown into the middle of a battle. And you are given these pieces and you're putting them together as you read. And that just is not what I was expecting from this kind of series when I don't even know how I even picked it up, but it was probably some recommendation by somebody who was like, "This is so good, you should read it." I was like, "Okay, I'll give it a try." So I would say that's probably the most shocking because it was the first shock.
Yeah, it really just throws you into just the maturity of the language, of the visuals, and just what the stakes to an extent too. Yeah, I'll say kind of things that may be obvious, but either the deaths in these three series, which are becoming less shocking, just keeps happening to characters, or just like vicious, like the Will getting stabbed by Sophie. in the neck, or Oswald getting the thing through the forehead just after he pretty much thought he'd make it because Prince Robot got knocked out, and then not only him dying, but who did it? Gwendolyn, who did it, like kind of because he had like a toy gun in his hand or a stun gun, and when someone like that does it, it adds a whole new element. It's like, oh, now Marco's mom is going to hate her. And the same thing was when Prince Robot, like when I saw the stalk, I totally forgot how she died, and Prince Robot just easily just blasts her through, and then now that leads to a whole new character thing where the Will definitely has personal beef with Prince Robot, which
Right.
you got to assume that'll butt heads at some point. So not only is it shocking when someone dies like that, but the ripples it creates into a new kind of character point for a certain character or arc or something like that, whether it's revenge or anything like that, deep sorrow. Like, Marco's mom just got over losing her husband, not over, but was dealing with it with this person who could understand her, and just like that, boom, she's grieving again. Like, it's just going to set her back mentally. So I think those kind of shocks are what, like I said, I'm becoming a little numb to it, but not really. The Will, I think I was a little numb. I'm like, yeah, of course, that guy's gonna get in a ton of trouble. He got stabbed in the neck. But they do keep it. It is impressive how he's still able to keep doing those types of things. And even the not death, just like Marco's dad, it was a death, but just that shock of him saying he is dying. Like, I don't know. The author's really good at, I guess, what's the daughter's name? Hope, or no, I was going to use her first name, Hope.
Hazel.
Hazel. Yeah, Hazel. Alana's like, we're not calling her, but she has that monologue or the narration about killing your darlings, and how artists or authors tend to do that. Was really sweet and kind of sad, but it really does. I think I think Brian K. Vaughan's telling you, like, when you only have darlings left, like, that's kind of who you got to kill. So yeah, I do think that's kind of the obvious answer that's most shocking, but he just does it really well. Where after 3 volumes, you think you'd be tired of it, but not really.
Cool.
What I was going to say, should we ask Mr. Anderson and Kip any general predictions you have going in the next 3 volumes? I mean, it's very broad what could happen, but if you feel free to make any jumps.
Well, I feel like I've made a few. But Prince Robot being bi is definitely one that I want to stake right now.
Really? Why?
Let's see what else. We're going to see crash helms again. I think they're going to be used to possibly separate Hazel from her parents. That's a random one, but we'll see. I want to see what form of separation does happen between Hazel and her parents. I'm hoping it's a non-lethal one, but not too. I don't have too much hope. I'm giving myself a Hob level amount of doubt here.
Very good, very good. You've been trained.
Yeah,
Mr. Anderson.
I'm thinking we're going to be getting more Hazel now. At the end of Volume 3, she's obviously more in like the moving and speaking kind of phase. I'm assuming the Will is coming back. He seemed to be in a pretty bad way at the end, but I don't think we're quite done with him.
Yeah, I don't think we're done with him.
And I'm kind of thinking that, I'm assuming the stakes are going to start to get raised. Maybe slowly, but that particularly these 2 governments are going to start coming to more of a head over Hazel and what this means. Like, I don't think they're going to be forgotten anytime soon, I guess is what I'm saying.
That is interesting. We didn't talk too much about it, the 2 kind of different governments. Because this is kind of essentially a Romeo and Juliet story between the 2 different kind of the winged and the horned governments. That's been really interesting. And, even like the romance book, I feel like that's almost a character, that romance book that Alana read while they were, prisoner and guard.
The subversive romance book.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting that he chose a romance book and it's not like a religious text or anything, but something like a romance book really is a vocal point between two governments they're hunting down, find so important between these two characters that bonded over a romance book. I don't know. He was trying to something there with that, but
censorship of romance books has never been particularly strong.
those are good predictions. Anything you guys want to talk about before we go? I did want to bring out, I forgot to say something that didn't totally work for me. I did not hate it. We didn't talk about them too much, but I think I did always feel like I wanted to get to something else. So the two journalists, I thought they were fine. I'm curious. Honest to God, I forget. I'm pretty sure I know where the story goes, ends up, but I don't remember much after this. But so I'm a little excited to go forward, but I did think it was a little choppy, just those kind of interviewing people throughout the story, because you kind of got that with Prince Robot, where he's also questioning people and stuff.
I think that was perhaps mainly a choice to be able to give more backstory about the main characters. I agree, like they're not my favorite, but they don't I don't hate them either.
I thought they gave some interesting looks into a different part of society, I guess.
Yeah.
Because Prince Robot's rarely in like the halls of power.
Right.
He's out on assignment too often.
Yeah.
And those guys gave a nice look at what the official line of the political party in power is.
Yeah. They gave us a view that's different than, the what's it called? Like the people who are under threat or being the pursuers. They gave us a view of like every quote unquote like everyday life.
Yeah.
And then with the wife, the princess, then you get to see like the everyday life of somebody in royalty, like in the halls of power.
Mm-hmm.
And the what's his name? The dude with wings, who's the is that his name?
I think his name's Gale.
The intelligence guy.
Yeah, the winged intelligence guy.
I liked where they ended up in this too, where it's like they didn't just kill them off, like the assassin union, which is a very fun subject. The union of assassins.
Magical binding contracts, fun.
Yes. If they talk about the story at all, they're all gonna like die or something, explode or something, which is an interesting kind of. It just brings up another interesting twist where they're talking, because they're also a couple, the two reporters.
Yeah.
They're like saying no story's worth dying for. It brings up like journalistic integrity and things like that too, which is a really interesting avenue. Anyway, all right. Any last words? I'll let you guys. Anything last things you wanted to say about volumes 1 through 3? Panda, Kip, Mr. Anderson.
I think we covered it.
Excited to see where we go next.
Yeah, very excited. Now I can read more. Yay.
Honestly, I am really excited because I want to see their reactions as they go through the rest of the series. So that's really fun for me.
Definitely Prince Robot. I'm excited.
Oh, very, very excited for Prince Robot. Very excited. Kyptan since his first appearance on screen. I was like, ooh, what is this fooly cooly nonsense?
Cool. Take us out.
That'll do it for the Saga group. Thank you to Craig, our overlord, for letting us talk about these fun things. Thank you to Horizon Brave for starting this whole shebang. And go to our Discord, hang out with us, or go to the Legendarium's Discord and hang out with us. If you want to talk more Saga. For Befuddled Panda, Kyptan, Mr. Anderson, I'm Yettibeats, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.